Alexandra, how are you doing today?
I am doing fabulous. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So, if I remember correctly, I think the first time we ever, met each other was on a Zeme group chat. I forgot which one it
Oh my
was, but
God.
I think it was the Rowan one or the MSU one. But yeah, it's been a while.
It has been. I'm pretty sure. No, I think it was the Rowan one. So it's been a real long hot minute. And yeah, look at where we are right now. You with your podcast, and here I am getting interviewed for what I do and love the most. So,
Exactly. Awesome. So, the first question I always ask to all the people that I interview, just tell the audience who you are and what you do.
all right, yeah, of course. Oh, excuse me, as someone was just calling me. Hi, I am Alexandra Rudaya. I am a small business owner and I have Air Creations. I do photography, videography of events, sports, pretty much most that you can name and think of. And I've been doing it for a little bit over a year now, which is even crazy to think about. So, yeah.
Awesome. So you've been doing photography is it just photography or everything else according to media for a whole year?
So I basically I started my business for like over a year now. So the photography I actually started a couple years back.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly like 2 years ago. So it was my sophomore year. I did pictures at a homecoming game at my high school. It was like their football game. And I did it as a joke for the fun of it. And I enjoyed it so much. I was like, I'm gonna take this like seriously. So I was
Right.
like, okay. So I just kind of started getting the groove. And then I started opening my business in April of 2023.
I see. So the business is called Air Creations, correct?
Yes,
So
yes.
let's dive into that first, right? What made you I guess start your own business from the ground up instead of joining a developed team that's already been established in the photography game?
I am the person that does not like to be bossed around. I kind of
Okay.
have my own method. I have my own creativity. Like I also like helping people. So if I have to hire up for someone like, oh, like let me like have you as assistant for something, like that's just kind of my thing. Because I've been through multiple other companies and they're great. They're fabulous with what they do, but their creativity is just not like my creativity, or it's just more that they've been so harsh. And it's just like, I cannot do that. I have my own piece of method. I know how I like to do it. And it's just been so well for me. And plus, also, even through quarantine, I knew I wanted to start my own business. So, but I just never got the grasp of like, what should I do? And I just kind of, and again, as I mentioned, I did the homecoming game for my like high school and I absolutely loved it. So I was like, what? That's probably where I had to start. So I'm pretty like very business like. I'm very entrepreneurship. I have my own way, kind of like talking to clients as well. Like I'm a very communicative like person. Like all my friends even call me like a literal D1 yapper. So I'm like, okay, that's how I do it. I mean, and people still love me. Like I even like to this day, they're like, how do you just do this? How do you just talk to people? I feel like it's just easier if you're such a social person. Because if you know how to talk to people and if you like talking to people, because I know not many do, then it just gets easier. And if you want to start talking to people, like if you want to make your own business, you just have to learn how to do it. So,
Exactly. Awesome, awesome. And I like the fact that you mentioned you're a D1 yapper, right? And people like make fun of it a lot. But when you're in entrepreneurship, doesn't matter what type of industry you're in. I feel like, in my opinion, it's a good skill to have because I can't think of a field where anyone is in that if you have like social skills and people skills, it'll set you back, right? It almost always, if not always, gives you an upper hand as opposed to, whoever you're competing with. So I really love that you implemented that.
yeah, no, absolutely. Like I know there's so many shy people and I even like to this day like get so many DMs like I love what you do, like I love your work. I don't know how you do it, but I absolutely love it and I want to join in with you. And they join in just like seeing because there are a lot of shy people. Like don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to like talk to me. Don't be afraid to ask people. Because I think and I think this actually even with just aside from being a T1 yapper, it also talks about consent because if you don't know what the person wants, it's better to know than to like kind of do something and then they're not going to like it. And especially that with clients, you have to know kind of what they're looking for and always discuss and make sure that it goes according to plan. Then it that's how the result goes to be. So
Exactly. I
yeah.
like that you said that because I used to be I don't want to call myself a photographer because it was never to the scale you have,
Yes,
right? But like
I
in
remember
terms
your
of,
work.
yeah, in business and stuff like that, I just shot for like my school sports. I never really ventured outside of that. But I like what you said that it's better to overspeak and like get, more information than you actually need about
Right.
the client that you're working with rather than less. Because if you have less information than you actually need, there's going to be gaps in information that you missed. And then let's say when you show them the results, the client's going to be like, oh, but I wanted this. Oh, but I wanted that. So that prevents that type of miscommunication in the end.
Yeah, and I would even want to add on. Usually, what I like to do with my clients too, like even it's for media days, even it's for Sweet 16s or any type of event specifically involving people, like and doing a specific photo shoot for them, I always show the photo and see like, oh, do you like this? Do you want that? And they're like, oh, can we change it up? And I'm like, yes, of course, because if the client doesn't like something, why am I gonna use it? You know what I mean? So even I think when I was just, I'm losing my mind today. That's literally like every day when you're talking so much. Um, actually might even get back to it. So if anything, we can just move on from what I was just about to say.
All good,
So
all good. So, let's take it all the way back to, let's say, I don't even want to call it year one because you're essentially still in year one, right? But just
yes.
like the first couple of weeks to the first month of your business, right? Walk us through how was it like starting up from the ground?
Honestly, that's a very good question. So you don't always start with literally getting clients day one. And I think that is such a stereotypical thing. And I think even if you're starting like business entrepreneur, you always want to be like, oh my God, I'm gonna get my first client. I didn't get my first client until like few months later on. All usually how to even start building up a portfolio, which is basically showcasing your work. You have to kind of do some shots for free. Like when I started it, yes, I have my like business. I got my website. I was focusing and dedicating on that. I was starting to go more branching out in the social media because I had to like go on Instagram, go on TikTok, and just show off what I do and make the content for what I do. And even that, like I did like some events that were for free. Like I did like the boys volleyball game for free. I did like the boys baseball, like any type of sport that they're like, oh, you can come by and you can take pictures. Like if it's for free, take that opportunity. I mean, don't take that opportunity when you're like 6 months or 5 months into your business, but you want to start somewhere. And from there, there's always like referrals and like, oh, she did like amazing work on that. Like, oh, I love her. Like, this is phenomenal. Then they're like, huh, I mean, how much do you charge? And it's gonna be like kind of through that process. So, but obviously, maybe for about like weeks to like a few months, definitely you start somewhere from scratch. You have to build it up like your portfolio in this case. So yeah,
I
so it definitely
see.
wasn't easy. Yeah, so it definitely wasn't, but again, I started up and I'm here now today, thriving, still getting like six. I had like six like in the past like 2 weeks in a row, like back to back, which is crazy for me. And I have like a few more coming up this week, and I'm like, oh yeah, but it's all worth it in the end if you just trust the process and you put that motivation into it.
Awesome statement right there. Yeah. So it was very similar to mine in terms of when I started photography, right? I did a lot of shooting for free during the first few weeks. I want to ask you, as the service provider, right? How did you, I guess, prevent or just eliminate totally any sort of manipulation from the client as to like taking advantage of you taking these shots for free?
Oh, wow, that's a very big one because that wasn't easy for me too. So I'm a people pleaser. That is actually one of the difficult things because I like to please people. So it's like if the first time I'm like, okay, yeah, that is like whatever. But if they don't like kind of acknowledge you for the work or they don't like give you credit for the work, then always honestly what I like to do, I like to watermark my photos like completely. Like you know how if you were like a senior, you were a senior like actually quite not too long ago, like literally last year. You know how sometimes there's like professional photographers who watermark their photos?
Yeah,
Like that, like it's like literally diagonal lines for the ones who don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So literally that's how you kind of have to go. And then to like listen, if you want to, you have to pay for it. Usually 90% of the time and pretty much most of the time they will pay you. But it's better to kind of have that watermark through because that's the only way, probably one of the only ways. I know every other photographer has their own different ways. They usually say like, listen, I can't do this. But for me, if I'm like for someone who's a people pleaser like me, my biggest thing is like I have to watermark it. I always watermark my photos. Like if it's paid, then you know I have a downside in the corner. If it's not paid in event, then yeah, you gotta do the long, long, annoying watermarks, and you kind of have to pay for that. So I mean, I don't really charge that much either. But like, listen, you gotta do what you gotta do for your business because you can't always have that advantage because that's what people like to do. They like to go cheap, especially like just generally, like nobody likes anything expensive. So it's like, listen, I don't know what you like what you want me to do because I remember like the first time like I had it like that incident before. I think I paid like at that time it was like $50 an hour or something like that, or at least it was like a 50 in total. It was like definitely in that range. And they're like, that's so expensive. I'm like, have you seen other photographers? Like, I remember my Sweet 16, I had to pay like $900 for my like whole event. So don't even complain. 50 is like for me, it's like not that much, but it's like for a photographer, like especially we have our own equipment, we have to kind of like pay back for what we spent because the equipment's like over $3,000 or even more. So it's like basically student loan in debt, but like in camera world.
I see
So
what you mean. Yeah, people think it's absolutely crazy. Some even think it's unnecessary to have those
right,
gigantic watermarks over photos. But in reality, that's probably one of the only shields you have against that type of, being taken advantage of with your pricing and such like that.
absolutely. So yeah, and I think for someone who's even starting this, like especially that goes back with communication. If you're someone that's shy, talk to the client. If they're gonna start like being angry at you, just still talk to them calmly. Just still try to like sort it out. If not, then like listen, then I'm sorry. Then there's nothing I can do. It
Right.
happens. Like
Yeah.
I think there's always gonna be clients who are not gonna be happy. You can't always please everyone. If they're not happy, they're not happy. Like that's what it is, you know? So
Exactly. You
yeah,
can't win over every client that you work with. I don't think that's exactly possible, especially in a field where you're working with so many different types of people and so many different types of personalities. You're going to eventually
right.
run into one person like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any stories about any scenarios like that?
Well, actually, I have quite a few. I had one with the boys soccer actually, and I still talk about it to this day of how much I always like. I can't say hate the team. I just regretted. So, long story short, actually, their coach didn't even know about this. So apparently, they had their senior night, and I was like, "Sure, I'll do it." We discussed on a price, done and deal. I did their photos the day of. The coach actually texted me. He thought I was doing it for free. But apparently, after I did the photos, I watermarked the photos like in a long diagonal way. And apparently, first of all, it was a lot of miscommunication. I guess they didn't understand how I was doing my work. So, because they thought, like, oh, can you get every player on the team? And I'm like, if you want every player on the team, like, if you want to talk about the bench too, I mean, I could. I mean, I don't know what's interesting about the bench, but it is what it is. So I was like, okay, but I'm not like I didn't do the bench people. Like you wanted to do the players who are playing and also whoever is in the senior night and did that. And like they love the photos, just like A was like not enough of like quantity. Because it wasn't even about the quality. They knew my quality was phenomenal. It's just the quantity that was bothering them. And then they all of a sudden wanted my raw files. And I always talk about this. You do not ever want raw files. And for the ones who are watching this, raw literally meaning like the actual photo that you're taking, that's the picture it is. It's not post processed. It's not like detailed or anything. It will just look crap. And I do not like sending crap photos. And I've always said this like to the clients, like you do not want raw files. If you really want to, like I will give it to you. Like it'll be in the zip archives or whatever it is, but like just like let me know. And I sent them to them and they said that apparently they couldn't get it for some whatever reason. And I was like, okay, I sent it to you guys again. Let me know if you were having issues. They never got back to me since. The coach found out. He talked to me. He was like, "Were they supposed to pay for the event?" And I'm like, "Yes, they were supposed to pay me for the event, and they never did." And he asked for what the price was, and I told him the price, and it turned into a whole fiasco. And I remember it was like the day before we all went for like Christmas like break because I was in school, I was in class. They're like, give it like the captain was giving me a whole fiasco, telling me like I was so rude. I was like, whatever it was. I was like, I don't even remember being rude. I was very calm. I was very like sincere, I guess you want to say it in this way. Like I was just very mature about the situation. I was like, listen, and they're gonna pay me like half the price. I'm like, you know what? Like I and then apparently I didn't tell them about the watermark. It wasn't the watermark, it was the zip archives. Like they never got it. I'm like, if you never got the archives, then why didn't you tell me? Like you're like, and that's what I always like get mad about because and I say this all the time, communication is such an important quality just generally in the humane society. So, and if you don't communicate with me, this is gonna happen, conflict and argumentation in this case. So I remember it was just such an uneasy event for me on that day. But the coach was nice enough and he actually paid me the amount of money. And I was like, oh, thank you. So like at least he understood. He felt really bad. Like, and by the way, apparently also the coach, like not the coach, the captain actually gave the he got the money, or but he never gave them like a refund back, like to the people who actually paid and didn't get anything. So
So he
I
just
was
kept
like,
the money that was given?
yep. I'm like,
Oh.
no. I'm like, I don't know if you want to do that, but like, okay, all right. Like, it is what it is. Like, that's up to you. I mean, like, and it's just one of those situations. The other situation was with another, like, it was like a school's fashion club thing. Like, they were great. The photos turned out phenomenal. But there again, it was the same thing. Like it was the quantity. They didn't want post process. It was just like a whole like miscommunication. And then they got mad at me for something. It would turn into just a whole fiasco. They're about it. Like it also talks about like, oh, threatening me to sue or whatever. And I'm like, we're not doing it. Don't go there. You're saying that, but you're not gonna do it. And I think it's so important that again, like, and I think you will probably bring it up at one point again too. Communication is so important, and I will still talk about it. It's going to be brought up probably like at least 200 times in this conversation. So if you're out there, learn to communicate and actually stand up for yourself. Because if you don't know how to do that, then it's going to be even harder for you while even having this own business. So
That's actually insane.
yeah, I
That's
know
all I can really say because like you have two totally different situations, right? But both of them have the shared factor of the main problem being miscommunication, right? So
exactly
if communications all go smoothly, like many of your other projects, they turn out really well, right?
right, exactly.
So
So
to flip the situation on its head here, right? Tell us some of the best, events that you've shot for and, your most memorable and successful ones.
I actually, this is going to be really interesting. So, I have a best friend of mine who I've known her for years since middle school. She's like a sister to me. She's like everything to me. It's so interesting because I had like finally gotten my license like the day before her birthday. And she was like, and I was also in her court. And she asked me, like, hey, can you also do me like a video for my Sweet 16? And I was like, absolutely. And she, by the way, paid the price that she like that was needed. She was like, her family loves me. They're like, oh, we'll pay you the price. And she's still basically one of my favorite clients to this day because she's so like out there promoting. She's out there like giving referrals the most. So I literally give her so much credit to. So I was like, okay, yeah, absolutely. And the fact that I got to do what I love, like doing, like, yes, it was stressful. I feel like doing like a video, like you're working and also the sharing the same moment, like the best moment of your life with your best friend who was gonna have this one and only Sweet 16 ever, like of her own. It is very important for me, like the quality, the context, every moment that has to be within what she recommended because we always talk and we're like we were communicating how she wanted this, how she wanted that. And I was like, I always talk to the clients about it. So honestly, having like this moment where I got to film her Sweet 16 and I got to be in her court, yes, it was challenging. I do not recommend, but honestly, for her, I was able to do anything for her. And I still will be doing anything for her to this day. Like, she's like just phenomenal with everything. So I was like, I'll do it. And I think it turned out into a great success. Like, she was starting to bawl her eyes out, like, in the best way possible. Her friends and family loved it. And like, that's what I needed. That's what I made sure of. So I think just sharing that with your best friend is amazing. And I think even just so, like, even as a high school student, like, obviously, like, you're doing media days, they're always fun. Like, I've always had like track media days, which was really funny for me because I think it was like the track guys that were like always like obsessed. Like, I had like the cross country team for the girls. That was my first ever media day that I ever did. And then the guys track were like, oh, they saw my work, like, oh, let's just do it. I'm like, okay, yeah, bet. And I started getting like the Christmas props because it was like during the winter track season, so they were having so much fun with it. And they started and it kind of went not viral, but it kind of get amount of views, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're doing more of those. So I think media days, and I honestly I tried to make every moment the best as possible, every like minute that I have that client. Like and as I was gonna say, like I'm a high school student, so even getting invited from like college people, like they're like, oh, we want you to do this soccer game for me. Can you do it? Or we want you to go to this homecoming game. Can you do it? And like, we'll absolutely pay whatever we need to pay you. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, absolutely. So honestly, even doing that was amazing for me.
Awesome, awesome story. I love how you were able to connect something that you love doing the most with your own best friend. Like that's
Yes.
something special because obviously it's a really great big event that I'm assuming you shot in the past beforehand, right? Sweet
Yes, I
16s and
mean,
other stuff like that.
she's literally been a part of my like film or anything. Like she was even a part of my big first film that I didn't even mention to a lot of people. So I actually, before I started my business, I guess that's how I kind of commercialized it too. I did like a short film called Every 15 Minutes. Basically, long story short, it's every 15 minutes somewhere in like California. Like it's like it was a statistic fact too. That's a long word to say. Wow. Okay. um someone has died, at least someone has died to drunk driving accidents, and it's like teenagers as like in that statistic. And I was like, we never, I've seen so many other people post it like from like other states, and I'm like, we never had ours to promote anywhere. And she was like a part of this film, and where she was like the main character because she was like looking forward to college, and she was at a like quote unquote party at that time, and she was like, oh my God, fine, whatever. And we got like a, it was hard, trust me. I had to film this like film in like 1 month, planned, props, everything was just, it was difficult. And I remember having days and weeks and even weekends. Like even I remember this one weekend I filmed it, and it was like hours before I had to go to my best friend's sweet 16. And then like it was like that moment, it's like so crazy and chaotic, but it turned out in such a good ending, which I can't even tell you. I checked yesterday, it has almost 18,000 views to this day. So I was like such an
Really?
yes, I, if there's a link below, I'll definitely like share it too. It's actually phenomenal. And it was the first short film I ever created because it was technically in my class, only juniors and seniors could do it. I was the only sophomore that did it. And I was like, I want to do this and I want to do it. And they're like, okay, yeah, sure. So with the pressure and with motivation, she was there through like that process. Like she's been there like basically through starting my photography, videography journey, like film journey, and like everything in that case. So she definitely like is like, yes, she deserves a whole round of applause, ovation for just dealing with my journey. So she knows how much of a stress, and she was like, she even promoted. I remember when I first got my like business and website up there, she's like, guys, my best friend got a business. Like she started her own business. Like, go check this out. And I'm like, oh, stop it, I'm gonna cry. But yeah, it's like such a sweet moment for me to have someone like actually who's there by my side and actually that cares, you know? So
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I never knew about that short film. So let's pivot from, your photography to your videography. Which came first, by the way?
actually video came first, but I'm a more of a photo. It's such a weird way for me to say this. Like usually how it works, if you're like doing photo or video and like whatever you do first, usually you stick with that as your forte. I like
Right.
doing both, but I like photography more. I think maybe it's just because it's easier to post process or something like that. I'm not quite too sure why. I think it's just like the whole creative aspect with it. Because I think in just photography, you can experiment to something more. Like you can go into Photoshop or you can go into Lightroom. By the way, these for the ones who don't know what that is, it's a editing app that Adobe has. So like, and there's multiple. You can do whatever you want with it. You can get so creative with it. Like as I said, like for the media days or even just normal photos, like I literally, there's times where I used Photoshop, and sometimes what I used to do, I kind of need to bring it back. Like how I used to commercialize my work. I always had a little surprise object I would go on Photoshop and put that in with my generative AI, and it's like pretty well hidden. Like I'm like, oh, so if you want to guess where the object is, go ahead and guess and find it. And like some people absolutely just loved it. Like for the media days, like if there's a backdrop, I try to go on Photoshop and make a quick backdrop, just for the funs. Like I like to be fun. I mean, never am a boring person. I'm so creative, so I want to always experiment. And I think it's such an interesting analogy because again, people just think photography is just a click with the camera, and I'm like, that is not how it works. I remember like people telling me like, oh, it's so easy. I'm like, have fun. There's like hundreds of modes, and you don't even know about any of them. So yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, so photography is what I lean more towards, but videography is what I started with. So
Okay. I see. So I think I was about to ask, right, like which one you like more, and you just answered. It's strange, isn't it? Because even though you started out with videography, you still gravitated towards photography at the end of the day. So it's really interesting. Yeah.
yeah, it's such an ironic thing because I think it's how a lot of people kind of go for like, oh, if I start with something, I might lean more towards to whatever, or they go the polar opposite, like me. Like, I mean, who likes to be the same, right? We all have to stand out somewhere, one way or another. Like, I still do video to this day. I literally finished a whole like video highlight for an elementary school that they asked me to come by for. It was like it was a wonderful event. Like I'm telling you, like anything you want to do, you can get creative in both ways and still make the best product out of it. You just have to take your time and patience and to not rush it. So
Very, very true. I like that. Yeah. So, we went from the origins of your business to, a couple of stories as to, what makes it such an interesting field, right? Now, let's take, a glance at the future outlook of what you're doing right now, right? So, you're a senior in high school, right?
yes.
Are you going to college?
I plan on to. So actually what's so interesting, I actually committed no, I didn't commit, sorry. I got accepted into Montclair recently. It was back in July. So they have their like early bird admission program. So I was like, you know what? Why not? I'll do it. If I get in, great. If I don't, then I'll just reapply again senior year. That's what's the best part about it. I did get in with it. I actually, what's so interesting, I'm trying to change my major. Because like I definitely like the business side, but if something goes wrong, like I can always have it as a side with me because I definitely want to expand more into it. Like I still would like to get clients. I still like to like help out people. So I think honestly for me, like I see myself in that entrepreneurship, but I also see something else with it too that can combine both ways. But yes, I do plan on going to college. So I've also applied to TCNJ, Rowan, and Rider, but Rider just for the funds of it, just to see like if I do get in with like if I it's private or not, because it is a private university. And usually private universities are hard to get into. So like, oh, phenomenal. Okay, like we'll see how that goes. If I don't get in, it's all right. It's not a big deal for me. So, but yeah,
Right.
I do plan on going and committing and see where we're going from there.
Awesome. Yeah. So do you plan on still, doing these other events, whether it be at the university or
Oh,
in or you're
absolutely.
connected to?
Oh no, absolutely. Like I just recently got the number from like because I went to a TCNJ's homecoming football game and they went against Keene, which they absolutely destroyed, which was such a shocker for so many of the people there because they did not think that that was going to happen. And I was honest, I was like, I'm just like, if there's any connections, like I immediately got the coach's phone number in case of something like, oh, like if I do go and get accepted into TCNJ, like I can literally just go to him and be like, okay, listen, I want to do this media job and I want to continue like doing what I do. And yes, I think it's honestly so cool just being able to do stuff in college as well because you're expanding. Like it's not just your because I'm from a small town in Jersey. So for me being able to expand into something more bigger than just my hometown, I think it's honestly a cool thing for me. Like again, I'm a as my friends say it, and I've said it already myself, I'm a D1 yapper. So I don't see an issue with why not and expand myself even more. So
It'll help you gain those connections in the future for sure. There's no doubt
absolutely.
about it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I can say, at least for me personally, I really gained a lot from this interview. I really enjoyed it too. This was an awesome way to, get to know more about you as a person and your business as a whole. So, to wrap things up here, do you have any advice to anyone that's starting out, or do you just have any general advice to the world listening?
Oh my God. I love when you ask that because every time someone does ask me, like this is like I've been through multiple other interviews and they always ask me this, and I pretty much give same advice to what I do. When you're out there, don't try and be someone else because when you're having your own creative aspect, it's how you create. You don't want to try and be someone else. Like, as I'm gonna say like this, when you're doing photography, videography, you always experiment. Like, I like to use this analogy of like when you're in a chem lab, there's always like some like liquids and like some type of chemical elements that you want to put in there, and you're always trying something new. It's whether you're going to blow up or you're not going to blow up. And if something doesn't work, try it a different way. So don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to try new things within photography or videography, or even just generally starting a new business. I think like it's amazing. You want to start from somewhere. And if honestly, if you can like get to other people like, hey, I want to work with you on this event. Like, let me see, is it okay if I can? Like, start from somewhere. Like, I even know myself, like, I had to work for other people to be able to kind of like understand, like, and yes, you're going to get through the difficult times, and it's not easy starting your own business, especially because I started this at like 16, 17, and it was definitely not easy for me, but you have to learn to push through it. And as I said, and I'm going to mention this for the final time, communication, communication, and communication. If you learn to communicate and don't be afraid to say a hi or hello, and just be as like positive as always, because you want to push through it and you want to be that amazing person that you want to be. So don't be afraid, go stick with your gut and communicate and be
Awesome,
creative.
Alexandra. Yep, awesome, awesome closing statement. So thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Alexandra. Thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.